Welcome back to this time, segment 3 of Chapter 2, Part 1, in which we're going to be looking at gender socialization, which is also one of the concepts for your photo project. So, in sociology, we emphasize that we aren't just born knowing what's appropriate for males and females, but rather instead we learn those things through the process of gender socialization. So, we emphasize that our views and roles regarding gender are shaped by our social environment. So, by environment, I don't mean biological, hereditary, but again, social environment. So we emphasize in sociology that we learn what it is to be masculine and feminine. We learn society's view of that. So we learn that as males or females, how should we behave? What should we look like? Such as, is it okay to wear or should we wear makeup or pants or a skirt, a dress, whatever it happens to be? We learn what emotions are appropriate for males and for females to express. We learn what roles to perform, such as who is supposed to be the disciplinarian in the family, who is it that's supposed to be in the position of judge, police officer, all kinds of things. So ultimately, we go through the process of gender socialization. That's also known as sex role socialization, although that's a bit of an older term, but they are, again, one and the same. So, gender socialization is the term referring to the process of learning the appropriate behaviors, attitudes, expressions of emotions, and so on, what is appropriate for a male and what is appropriate for a female. So, for example, a little boy may be playing with a doll, and someone might say, "What are you doing with that? Dolls are for girls," and take it away. One of the things that they may learn if they go to the store, for instance, they may be picking out a certain outfit, and their mom or dad may say, "Put that back. That's not for you. That's for boys," or "Put that back. That's not for you. That's for girls." They may have an interest, for instance, it may be a female who wants to wrestle or play football. And again, depending on their socialization, they may be given the message, "Go for it. If that's what interests you, go ahead." Others instead may end up, other females may be told, "Football, wrestling, you're a girl. Girls can't do those things." So we can be socialized a variety of ways. And that in turn has a big impact on our behavior and our expectation of others. So, as far as how do we learn that males and females are supposed to be different, look different in terms of how they dress or hairstyle, or whether or not they paint their fingernails, what toys are okay, what career choices should they embrace or not. One of the ways that children learn this is by observing, watching what it is that other males and females do, watching how they look. For example, the child might observe that a female parent, mom, carries a purse versus dad does not. They may observe a particular sex in their family among parents. If a heterosexual couple, they may observe that it's dad who does most of the driving, or instead that they take turns equally, or whatever it happens to be. And this applies also in families headed by a same-sex couple. They observe again, what is it that their parents do? How do they dress when they're getting ready for work? Again, do they carry a purse or whatever it happens to be? So they watch. When they go to the doctor's office, they observe, for instance, by sex, who tends to be the doctor, who tends to be the nurse. When they go to a store, when they go along with their parents to shop, they observe who typically by sex is the manager versus the cashier or other things like that. And again, what are their hairstyles and so on. So we end up learning these norms through what are called agents of socialization. These are people, groups, institutions such as schools, who teach us the norms we're supposed to follow. In this case, we're focusing on these agents of socialization teach us the gender norms. Now, the term agents of socialization is broader than just gender, talking about any norms that we're taught. But again, our focus in Chapter 2 is on how these agents of socialization shape our views of what's appropriate for males and for females. So again, agents of socialization, these are people, groups, and institutions that influence our behavior and so on. Besides the school as an institution, another example is the military, another example is the workplace. All of those different institutions can teach us gender norms, among other behavioral norms. So we're going to take a look just at some examples of agents in socialization rather, and examples of how they can influence us. By no means are these the only agents or the only ways that these agents socialize us. So starting with parents, we again watch the roles fulfilled by parents and observe if there's any gender pattern. Who tends to do the cooking? Who tends to do the disciplining or punishing of a misbehaving child? Who tends to pay the bills? Who works outside of the home? And so on. Who mows the lawn? Who works on the car? So we can learn not only what is it that we're supposed to be like as a male or female, but also what does it mean to be a wife? What does it mean to be a husband? Again, for instance, if it's Valentine's Day or anniversary time, is there something that one parent does compared to another that may differ by gender? And again, if they're being raised in a same-sex household, they can also observe other families and who does what. That can shape their view of differences between genders. So there's a variety of research looking at how parents do have an impact on their children or can have an impact. We will look here at some brief examples. One is there was a research study that showed that when children have a mother who is working, who's employed, with less traditional views regarding gender, that their daughters also tend to, as well as their children in general, tend to also have less traditional gender role attitudes, such as thinking that it is acceptable for a female to be an income provider. When it comes to the children having two parents with non-traditional views regarding gender, again, earlier we talked about traditional views of gender, such as the gender stereotypes. But when children have parents with non-traditional views regarding gender, the children that they have also tend to have non-traditional gender views too, such as, again, thinking that, hey, if mom wants to fix or can fix a car or be the fix-it person when there's a leaky faucet, that's okay. That, maybe dad's a stay-at-home dad or whatever it happens to be. The mass media is a significant source of gender norms, and the mass media refers to various forms of communication directed to large audiences, such as movies, TV shows, songs, the internet, magazines, books, and so on. So one of the things that you may want to do is Google the lyrics to All American Girl if you're not already familiar with it. And in that song, they talk about, for instance, that girls are sweet and little and beautiful. And those are adjectives that tend to be used to describe girls rather than boys. You might recall the poem type thing or little saying that says sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. We don't tend to hear sweet and beautiful versus handsome when it comes to boys. Also, in that song, it talks about her falling for the male football star, the high school athlete, and that she distracts him from practices. He may not get into college then if he doesn't get in then through football. So it's implying that rather than being able to get in on the academic merit, that males have to get in through their athletic abilities, and also implying that girls then don't play football. Also, in the beginning of the song, it talks about the dad saw the baby in this pink blanket in all of his dreams for his child, and what he would do changed, such as no longer having this dream of fishing. It portrays females as manipulative, that she has her dad wrapped around her little finger, is described, that she ends up having her boyfriend, future husband, wrapped around her finger. Again, that she can distract him from his initial focus of athletics and so on. And then moving on to Dear Future Husband. Again, if you're not familiar with that, you may want to Google that so you can familiarize yourself with it. That one has a mixture of traditional and non-traditional gendered messages. All American Girl was very traditional with its messages. But Dear Future Husband, the song and the video shows that you have the male pursuing the female, a traditional norm. Traditional portrayal as well is that it's the females who are wearing skirts and the bustier type of tops, makeup like lipstick and so on. The male traditionally is shown as desirable if he is physically strong, such as he's playing this carnival game and it's a fail if he can't make it go all this weighted thing go all the way to the top. At one point, one of the males lifts up his shirt to show the six-pack of abs and so on. The males are shown with a short cut of a hairstyle. But then some non-traditional messages. She is very dominant. She talks about ultimately that she's right, that he should agree with her, that she's right even when she's wrong. It talks also about how she doesn't know how to cook. And it talks about how she too is going to have a job, a 9 to 5. That she's not going to just put him and his desires first, but she points out that they'll also be spending time with her family. So there are other examples in those films as well. Again, you should go ahead and look at those yourselves. And in the next segment area, we are going to get into some more of the stereotypes in terms of the mass media. So we'll pick up with B, exposed to stereotype portrayals, in a little bit. Mentioned that song as well as the video had a combination of traditional and non-traditional gender norm messages. Some along the traditional line would be that the females were the ones wearing skirts, that it was a female wearing the bustier style top, the lipstick, the eyeshadow, things of that nature. And another traditional thing was that it was the male who was supposed to woo the female. He was supposed to be physically strong, such as he was supposed to be able to make, on that carnival game, make the thing go all the way to the top. There was a scene in which a male lifts his shirt up to reveal the six-pack abs. The males were shown with short hairstyles, pants. And then, in terms of talking about gender roles, she talked about herself in a non-traditional way of not knowing how to cook as opposed to being the one who does it. She talked about she too is going to have a job, that 9 to 5. And that it wasn't going to just be him and his needs first, but she was saying, hey, there's going to be room for my family. That this was quite assertive, her saying, I'm right, agree with me even when I'm wrong, even when you know I'm wrong, as well as teaching the norm of the sexual gatekeeper, that it's up to her if any kind of loving is going to happen. Now, in both the case of All American Girl and Dear Future Husband, these are also examples that the mass media often teaches the norm of heterosexuality, that typically it's about a male pining for a female or vice versa, and instead the songer makes the news when instead their song is revealed to be about someone of the same sex, and it becomes a news story or becomes talked about because it goes against the norm of what the mass media normally focuses on. So we'll continue looking at the mass media as an agent of socialization in our next segment.